What's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides podcast. I'm Keaton,
And I'm Kyle.
and we're going to bring to you first a word from our partners.
So first up, we want to talk about Heather's Choice. I don't know if any of you have checked out any of their products since we started the podcast. We were partnered with them. At checkout, you can use the code TheYoungGuides10. That's the Young Guides 10, all one word, at checkout and get 10% off. You can also find that link in our show notes down below, or you can find it on our website under our affiliates tab. Go to that link, use that link to purchase any product off their website, get 10% off, and then we get a little kickback from that, which we appreciate. That's one way you guys can show us some support. Again, we're selling our seasonal packaroons right now. We've got the 4 seasonal flavors. We got candy cane, we got Santa's Coal, we got ginger snap, and we got eggnog. Those aren't going to be around forever. Get those for the holiday season. Great stocking stuffer. Check them out. I love them. We got packaroons, we got dinners, we got breakfast. Check them out. heatherschoice.com, or use our unique link below to go get you some Heather's Choice and use our code TheYoungGuides10. Keaton.
All right, I got another one for you. We are very excited to be partners with Lucky Bug Lures. You can find their Instagram at Lucky Bug Lures, and then you can also go to www.luckybuglures.com. They have some very unique fishing lures for all types of fishing, trolling for trout, pike fishing, walleye fishing, anything you can, think of. They have something for the type of fishing you are doing. Make sure to go check them out. They are the creators of the Bingo Bug, Zombie Max, Fusion Extreme, Lucky Plug, F-Bomb, and the Pike Bomb. So, and at checkout, if you use the Young Guide 15, you can save yourself 15%, which is like almost pretty much tax and maybe part of shipping. So that's a pretty good deal. So make sure to go check them out and show some love to the Lucky Bug.
For sure. And you just got an order of Lucky Bug. Is that correct, Keaton?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I got it. I opened it up. Quality is way up there. I put it up with like Rapalas or even past Rapalas. You can't go wrong with ordering you some Lucky Bug, and make sure to show them some love.
For sure. Real quick, something neither one of us have talked a lot about lately, Keaton, is our outfitters. Keaton, I know that I saw a post Ellensburg Angler made about gift certificates. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, go give us a call. You can find us on Google or Facebook, Instagram. You can reach out through Instagram or just give us a call. You can Google Ellensburg Angler. There'll be a phone number for you. We're doing gift certificates for you can do full days on the Yakima. You can do walking wades. We offer half days. We do some unique guiding in the summertime. We have walking wades on the Cedar, and then in the winter right now we're doing Rocky Ford trip. So the best way to show some love to that fly fisherman or fly fisherwoman in your life is to call up Ellensburg Angler if you're in the area. And even if you're not in the area and want to come fish Washington, give us a call. We'll make sure we do it right for you. What about you, Kyle?
Up here right now in Alaska, I work for Bear Paw River Guides. Right now we are running a little promotion where if you book a trip, if you know you're coming to Alaska, you want to fish in Alaska next year, maybe you're coming to Anchorage for a family vacation, you got a day to yourself. Maybe you want to bring your family fly fishing, again, close to Anchorage. We're an hour and a half north of Anchorage. Our promotion right now is that if you book your trip between today and the December 24th, Christmas Eve, you've got a week. If you book a trip in that time period for 2022, you are put into a drawing to get 50% off your trip. So if you know you're coming to Alaska next year, you want to do a little bit of fishing, not far from Anchorage, on the road system, super accessible. Book your trip now, possibly get 50% off your guide trip next year. So check that out.
All right. Me and Kyle are very excited to bring this podcast to you. And I'm going to let Kyle take it away and explain a little bit about our guests that we're bringing on.
For sure. So we got Matt Crowe on from Alaska Rod Company. Keaton and I have been talking back and forth with Matt over social media. Found him a few weeks ago and his business, Alaska Rod Co. Matt is living in Alaska and he is building fly rods for Alaskans. He was having some issues finding a rod company in Alaska, had issues trying to send his rods down to the lower 48 and get them back in time for season. And he wanted to kind of get rid of that. He wanted to have something in Alaska, something in state that residents could turn to purchase rods, get rods fixed, and then just have a product specifically made for fishing in Alaska. So Matt's a super cool dude. He's going to go into that in depth in the podcast. Keaton and I really enjoyed talking with Matt. It was just like we were chatting with another friend. We deep dive into some big rabbit holes. We're talking lines and shooting heads and talking about grain weights, and we're talking about fast action rods. We're talking about so many different things in there. It's a super cool episode, vibing really well with Matt. I mean, he's got some great stories that he shares towards the end of the podcast episode. So this is one you definitely don't want to miss. I know we say this every time, but this is seriously one you don't want to miss because Matt's a super cool dude. We're going to have Matt on in the future, a super cool friend of the podcast. You can check out his website, alaskarodco.com, where you can purchase one of his fly rods. Right now, I believe he has just a 9-foot series. And as he was talking to us in the podcast, he is releasing more rods in the future. But right now, he has the 9-weight series of fly rods. He has, I believe it is a 9-foot 6-weight, a 9-foot 7-weight, and a 9-foot 8-weight. So check those out, alaskarodco.com. Matt's a super cool dude. We'll link him up in the show notes below. With that, Keaton, anything else before we hop into the episode?
I just want to give everyone just a big thank you for all the support you're showing us. We appreciate it. Me and Kyle, we're working hard. We're trying to give you great content, and you guys are showing it back, the love back to us. If you could give us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome. Let us know how we're doing or if we could do it better. And also give us a follow on Instagram, the Young Guides Podcast. You have ways to access our website from our podcast and Instagram. You get to see our upcoming episodes. You get to see a bunch of cool stuff. We share some of our personal experiences on our podcast. So like a few weeks ago, Kyle shared his snowstorm happening in Anchorage, Alaska, and him digging out his truck. So if you want to see some of that as well, give us a follow on there. And even if you see a message, if you like what you're seeing, can you show us a little love and share it to your story, tag us, and we'll put you on our story. So without further ado, here is our podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Young Guides Podcast. I'm Keaton, and
I'm Kyle. And on today's episode, we have a special guest. Today we have Matt Crowe from Alaska Rod Company. Super excited to have Matt on today. We're going to learn some about rod building and about his business and a little bit about his background in Alaska. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
For sure. So go ahead and give us a little bit of background on yourself, Matt. Tell people where you're at, what you do, where you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm currently located in Soldotna, Alaska, and I was born in Minnesota, and that's where my grandparents, they owned two fishing lodges there on Lake Kaptogama. So I grew up in a big fishing family, and my dad ran a guide outfit down there. And so it was kind of just like in the family that as soon as you turn 18, you go and get your captain's license, you know? And so turned 18, went and did that and started guiding in the family business. And then a couple years later, I went to a little private school in Wisconsin, and I was kind of doing my thing down there. Didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as a major. And all of a sudden I met this pretty little girl from Kenai, Alaska. And I'm like, oh man, that's pretty cool, Alaska. So we got to talking, and then I was doing the college thing, kind of, talking to several girls or whatever. And I went home for summer break, and I was doing my guiding thing, and then I saw it was leading up to the fall semester, and my wife Megan posted an Instagram picture of this big coho, like this beautiful buck coho, and I was like, "Ooh, hold up now!" So I texted her. I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" kind of thing, and one thing led to another, and we started dating, and then she graduated, moved back up to Alaska, and I had a couple years left, and so I was like, "Hey, where are you going?" So I moved up to Alaska, went to Homer. I started working on halibut charters, and then after that, I was in the medical field for a little while. I was working respiratory, and I originally went into that, thinking it'd be a good career choice, and it was good. And anybody who's in the medical field, it's an awesome profession. But the whole time I was in it, it really didn't seem like it was a good fit for me. It just kind of felt, off. And so I was like, you know what? I really want to go back to what I know, what I'm passionate about, and that's pretty much everything fishing related. So I applied for University of Alaska Southeast and got into their fisheries technology program, and graduated from there. And then I got a job working seasonally for Alaska Department of Fish and Game, working on the Chinook sonar program. And then in 2020, I started Alaska Rod Co.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
cool series of events.
Oh yeah. But yeah, no, I originally, how I started Alaska Rod Co. is, I think it was the beginning, like the start of, people were talking about COVID was happening, and it was starting to kind of trickle into, United States. And yeah, I think it was like the summer, I can't remember. I think it was the summer like before COVID officially hit. And I was fishing with one of my rods, and it busted. And this is like the beginning of summer. And I contacted the manufacturer, and they said, "Oh yeah, ship it back to us." And so I boxed it up, and I had to pay for the shipping to go all the way down to the lower 48. And I went the entire summer without that rod. And because it would take place, I'm like, man, this kind of bites. And so as I was waiting for this thing, I was searching on Google. I'm like, man, like I really want an Alaska rod. So I'm like, there has to be something. And so I just Google Alaska Rod Company. Nothing. And I'm like, seriously? Like, there's no rod company for Alaska? So like, this is nuts. And so, I did some more searching, and, there's a couple rod builders here and there, but there wasn't a designated rod company. And so I was like, man, I could, I really want to fulfill this void. And so I really liked the name Alaska Rod Co. I was like, oh, sounds pretty catchy, right? And so I didn't want anybody to take the name. And so I went on Instagram, and I just made, the little account and the handle, and then that was it. I just kind of forgot about it. And then I went back to it like a couple weeks later, and people are randomly finding the page and liking it and whatever. And so I posted, a couple of videos of, the rods I was making, and people are started messaging me and say, hey, can I get a rod? What are you making? All this stuff. This is a cool idea. And so I, had to keep messaging them back saying, oh, I'm in research and development stage right now. I'll get back to you when I got a production line ready to go. And then till finally a guide called me out of the blue one day, and he said, hey, I love this idea. Can I order 20 rods from you right now?
Dang.
And I was like, oh, well, and at this point I just fell into rod building as an addiction. Like from the point that I made my first rod, like I just kind of sat down. When you finally get done wrapping everything and putting the cork and everything on, it's just a crazy addicting feeling. And so I just fell into it, and I loved it, but it was more of just a hobby. There's tons of rod builders that just do that just for fun. And then my wife looked at me, is like, you got a lot of people asking about these rods. Like, I think you should kick it up a notch. Like, I think this could be something. And I would just always say like, oh yeah, like kind of more of a hobby, no, I don't know if anybody would really want my rods kind of thing. And so I just kind of kept researching it, and it was kind of one of those things where it just snowballed. The more I researched into it, the more information kept coming up, the more I kept wanting to dive into it. I'd build a rod, and I just wanted, all I could think about after I built that rod was, how can I build it better next time? What can I do differently?
Yeah.
And it just kind of spiraled into what it is today. And so yeah, I got a 9-foot line out right now, and then I also have on order a bunch of spays 10-foot single hand fly rods, and then switch rods as well. Oh,
Nice.
and halibut's coming.
Nice.
What so like you woke up, did you just one day you're like, I'm just gonna start building rods, or like for fun? Let's go back to like the very beginning. Like, did you have someone around you that was building rods? Did you just went on YouTube and saw something? Like how did you really start this whole process?
Yeah, I guess kind of more than anything, it started out of necessity. As I would have rods that are super old, and the guide would, become loose and then pop off or something.
Yeah.
And so I look up on YouTube how to, put a guide back on and stuff like that. And so it kind of morphed into just kind of repairing the rods. And then all of a sudden I got into YouTube videos of showing people how, from just raw materials, how they would assemble them. You
Yeah.
could make any type of handle you want. And so, yeah, I really just started down the rabbit hole of starting with repair. And then, over time, it just kept buying more parts, trying new things. And then it became a full blown addiction.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So,
And it sounds like you've got a good support system behind you there with your wife pushing you to.
yeah, she's amazing. I mean, we got a little I think it's a Zig Ziglar quote or something on the fridge. It's the standard. I think, yeah, I'll probably botch it, but it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And so I was thinking, a lot of these guys like RB Miser, CF Birkenheimer, like all these guys, like they just didn't wake up one day and just, slap together a rod and be like, this thing's amazing. And so from the very start, every time I built a rod, if I would mess up, or if the rod came out and it just wasn't exactly how I wanted it, it was trying to keep that mental headspace, like, you know what, I'm getting better. If I keep doing this and I get progressively worse, then I should probably just give it up. But so yeah, every single rod that I build is it's been an awesome journey. And you only get better. And right as I was about to launch my 9-foot single hand models, I was sitting down and I do this thing where I'll build the rod, and then I'm getting it all prepared to put in the tube, and I'm looking over with a fine tooth comb. I got a flashlight on. I'm looking at all the threads, all the epoxy lines, the glue job, everything. And I would constantly just sit there and nitpick and be like, that epoxy line on the guide foot is perfectly straight, or it's just this or that. And to finally Megan's like, Matt, like these rods are amazing. They look better than some of the rods at the store. And I'm like, well, no, come on. Like, you look at, brand X, or it's a $950 single hand. And she's like, okay, come with me. Come on, we're going to the store. And so she gets me in the car. We drive to the store, and she's like, okay, she picks up this rod, this brand X, $950 or whatever. She said, okay, this is the most expensive rod in here. Here you go. Examine it. I'm like, oh yeah, like the bottom stripper is off kilter, like that thread isn't evenly packed, there's a little space in there, the epoxy isn't right. I held the rod up, it wasn't spined perfectly. And then she's like, see? He's like, if you compare the top brand to what you're building, like yours are better, the same, if not better. She's like, you're ready. You can do this. And so it was cool, because I get really into a perfectionist type of mindset with my rods, and it was cool to just to have somebody to kind of rattle me loose a little bit and say, hey, like, you can do this. This is like, you're ready for this.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool, because then, and you also, when you're building rods for people, that you're putting the time and you're taking the time to build a quality rod compared to like a production line rod that, like Orvis, Sage, Reddington, they all make. They're just cranking them out to get them out to people. So yeah, really cool.
Taking the time to put your personal touches on it, making sure it's your quality control is pretty good.
Yeah, and yeah, that's one of the main things for me is just, it's quality control is everything. There's so much in the fishing industry. Sometimes things tend to get a little gimmicky. Like, oh, this, blank is made out of graphene, or this one has nano silica resin, and all this other crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But all that can only get you so far, as when you have somebody who just is totally engaged. And I kind of bring it to, you have a factory, at General Motors Corporation, and they're all building, cars, and they're, assembling them, and that's just what you do. And will that car get you to point A and point B? Probably. But, and, will that car be, extraordinary and outperform other cars? I mean, probably not. Might be better than some, might not be. But growing up, I knew this guy named Tom, and he was a real gearhead, and he actually built from scratch his own race car. And so whenever you went over to Tom's house, he had the big engine block there. The thing ran off of alcohol. Like, he had the custom welded everything on it. And, when you got in that car, like, it was scary. It was just, the performance of that thing was just nuts, because every time you went over to Tom's house, he had some sort of hot rod magazine that he was just, poring over, looking at the components, looking at the engine block and all the pistons, read anything, every single fine detail that was in that car just completely was amazing and blew away anything, production. And so that's kind of what I like to do with my rods, is I just spend so many countless hours just researching components, different ceramic inserts, different carbon fiber prepregs, different epoxies, anything, and just have the constant drive to, evolve and, make something better. And so it's really fun. And that's, just something that you can really delve into and create something that's catered to really high performances. It's really fun to do.
Gotcha. How many rods have you built in total now?
So since production started, I think I got about probably 30 to 40 of the 9-footers. And then, and then I got, I think 20 to 30 10-footer blanks coming, and along with space and switches too. So
cool. Now you say that you're like, oh, production, but production's just you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big thing. Is yes, usually I'll say like, we are researching this or something like that. And so when I say we, I'm the builder, and then my wife handles all the business side of things. So which is good, because I'm just the blockhead weirdo out in my garage, obsessing over these rods. And then Megan's the one that's actually, hey, like you need a tax ID, like you need a business license, like you need to pay, sales tax on this or whatever, you need a website domain. And so she kind of reels everything in and keeps everything on the straight and narrow. So without her, I'd just be some schmuck out in the garage, just slapping things together. So
oh man, that's awesome. Rod builder and quality assurance, huh?
Oh yeah, quality assurance. Yeah, that's another thing, is whenever I'm done building a rod, it's such a twisted way of thinking, but every time I get done building the rod, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna see if I can break it. And so I'll string that thing up, and I kind of do it in a couple steps. So before I build on that blank, I'm twisting that thing, I'm putting it in a spine finder, and I'm bending that thing over, and I'm like, okay, like, if you're gonna break before I build you. And then I get it built, and after it's built and cured and everything, I'll take it, and I usually string it up. I'll either attach it to something or have Megan hold on to one end of the line, and I'll just high stick that thing, just bend it. And I'm just putting everything I got, and the whole time I'm thinking, all those hours, please don't break. But if you're gonna break, just do it. And then so I do that, and then one more time before, if a customer buys one, where I'll pull it back out, look over everything, make sure it's good to go, and then one more time before she heads out the door, I'll just give her a really good flex, because I essentially, I really want that rod to perform, be the best thing they've ever touched, and if it's gonna break, it better break in my hands. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So I got a question for you. So if someone's using your rod, I'm out fishing, and me being me, I break it in like my window, or I slam it into a tree as I'm walking in the river. What's your like warranty like? What do you repair rods? Do you send pieces for rods? Like, what do you do?
yeah, so it's all lifetime warranty, and so yeah, if you break a rod or something like that, you'd send the rod back to me. I'll get it, and then what I like to do is, for every rod I put out, I got a blank waiting for it. So I kind of buy rods in twos, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so, if someone breaks a rod and the tip's bad or something like that, I got a whole entire rod that either I can build up another one, or I can fit the furl and get that section out to the client within a matter of a week or 2 weeks, or however faster if they live in town.
Yeah.
But what I never wanted to do was, someone breaks a rod and then it's like, okay, well, let me ship the rod back to me, and then I assess it, and then I have to get a replacement tip from my OEM manufacturer, and that's just a big lag time. And everybody knows that the fishing season is so short in the summertime here,
Yeah.
and so I didn't want to put guides or fly shop owners and stuff, if a rod is broken, I want to be able to get that turnaround time as quickly as possible and just get them back fishing.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the outfitter that I guided for here in Alaska this year. We had some rods that we'd have to ship the lower 48, and he's like, it's not gonna we're not gonna get them back before the end of the season. And a lot of times we didn't, and we'd have to go just buy rods somewhere in Anchorage or in Wasilla, because there's no way you're getting the rod back that fast enough.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something I'm really trying to alleviate. And that's what blew my mind about no rod company based in Alaska. So the, to me, I've fished multiple states and all this. There's something special about the Alaskan angler, like the sense of community and everything. They're just great, awesome people, and so I really wanted to bring them something just super special, but also just have that support here. Where if you're a guide outfitter, out in Bristol Bay or something, or whatever, that something happens, you call me, I can get more rods to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. That's a good quality to have in a company too. Um, do you have a repair fee if something happens?
Yep, 45 for the section.
Perfect. Yeah.
What is like the average cost of, say, your equipment to build a rod? Like, how much does that cost to ship up? How much are the parts?
Yeah, so the parts, the hardest part for a lot of the components, and like a lot of the really, really high end blank manufacturers, you know, those blanks can be anywhere from 250 to 415 for just a one blank. And so being able to get those high end blanks at an actual good price, it's taken a lot of finagling, just a lot of calling manufacturers, and a lot of the times, you know, I'll call a supplier and they'll say, "Oh, great, you want these space. How do you want 1,000 or do you want 2,000?" And I don't really, I've had a couple offers for investors, but right now I'm just doing everything on my dime, just because I want to maintain control and the creative aspect of it. And so being able to place bulk orders, I can usually only do 20 to 50 blanks at a time.
Yeah.
And so that does get challenging, but luckily I've been able to finagle some people enough to, to get me those at a decent price. But Yeah, so I mean, the blank is obviously the biggest expense to get it, and then components. Most of the components, as far as like the stripper guides, the snake guides, though those aren't bad. You know, they're not going to break the bank if you have to order in bulk with those, and real seats as well. Um, but yeah, pretty much the blank takes up most of it. But yeah, it can get a little more spendy if you're going higher end components like titanium guide, stripper guides, and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
And so you mentioned you mentioned fly rods, and then you said something about halibut rods. Do you do any like drift rods, like gear rods or anything of that sort, or are you mostly just a fly fishing rods?
Yeah, I'm trying to get into like a lot of like some back bouncing rods, and
Yeah.
spin cast and all that kind of stuff. But that's it seems to be I've kind of stretched myself a little too thin because
Yeah.
I'm really trying to bring out the space. I feel really bad because that's the most requested model by far, and so everybody's always checking up on me with messages saying, "Hey, the space ready yet? The space ready yet?" And I've just been just so deep dived into the spay and switch and the single hand flies that I've finally, I've got the design, I've got the blueprints of how those things are going to go, and now I'm slowly turning my attention to
Yeah.
spin and casting, and I had a couple requests from charter guys for halibut rods, and so I got a couple halibut blanks in the shop that I'm putting together and working prototypes for those too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. How customizable are your rods? Like, say I want to really trick out my rod. Is that something you can do, or is that more on, or is that more on you and how you want to build that rod?
Yeah, so I try and walk the fine line of a production rod. So yeah, I'm trying to put out rods where they're uniform, they have our signature, burnt burled cork handles. And so when you buy a Alaska Rod Co. rod, you know what you're gonna get. It's production signature. It's what it is. And so I try and I'll do some silver trim bands and things like that. But when it comes to more, tricking it out and having all this crazy, inlays and all this fancy thread work and different cork, that gets to me in the more of the custom rod builders realm, and which I could do, but if you're trying to bust out as many rods, the more thread work, the more intricacies, it kind of eats into the clock.
Yeah.
For sure.
The more time you spend on that rod is, you're starting to lose value on that rod from experience of like, I have also friends that build custom rods. So, they're doing the personalizing and they're like, yeah, it's really cool and that you see the end product, but at the end, I have like 4 weeks and just doing this little like American flag pattern on it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's tough though, because there has been multiple times of I'll be making a rod. I'm like, oh man, I'll just throw a saw blade on on the end furrow part. It'll look cool. I'm like, no, 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 it has to be uniform. But
So we were talking about your rods, the kind of rods that you've been building, some of your components and everything. Where can people find your rods? Are you located in any stores? Do you have any shops or retailers selling your stuff?
yep. So you can find them at www.alaskarodco.com, and then we have 2 authorized dealers right now. We have Wilderness Way in Soldotna, and then we got Mossy's Fly Shop up in Anchorage.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you know if anybody's purchased any of your rods through either one of those?
Yeah, it was funny. I dropped a couple rods off at Wilderness Way. They were my first uh, dealer, and so I dropped the 2 rods off, and then I just kind of went off and did my thing. And then shout out Cooper, one of the employees there, messaged me. I think like a week later or something like that. And he had sent me a picture of the 2 rods sitting on the counter. He's like, "Hey, I just sold both your rods. Like, we need a couple more." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that was fast."
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
ran him over there. Yeah, I guess it was some some dude from out of state, he's like saw him, he's like, those look cool, I'll take both of them. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
How many rods do you think you've sent out to people or people have bought? Like, what would be your guess?
My guess, let me think about this. I know it's over 15. I'm not sure if it's more or less, but so and the cool thing is that my company's such in the infant stage right now. Like if I sold one, I would just be ecstatic,
Yeah.
and so just the I just sold over 10 9-footers. It still just blows my mind that for right now I would consider it a success. There's so
Yeah.
many models that people actually ask for. And so once I get those going, I'm really excited to see them take off.
That's rad.
For sure. How many people have you had from out of state approach you versus in state to have a rod or to purchase a rod from you?
It's pretty much all Alaskans.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
and it's no secret that's that's my target audience. And there's been a couple people from like Washington or somewhere with the West Coast. They'll message, but primarily it's majority Alaskans.
That's cool. That's cool. Alaska owned company, and you got local community support. That's one thing I've noticed since moving up to Alaska is just the community of people here. I mean, we're all, I feel like, pretty independent people, but in a way we're also very interdependent on each other, and we work together and help promote each other because we're all we got up here.
Yep. Yeah, and that's kind of like one of the things that really just gave me more steam to keep going because some of these guys, they didn't know me from Adam. I'm just a schmuck in my shop building rods, and there's been a couple times where these photographers they would message me and shout out Nate, my buddy Nate. He takes amazing pictures, and he was like, hey, like, could I take one of your rods out and just shoot a bunch of pictures? And like, yeah, he like shot a bunch of professional grade pictures with my rod. And like way better because I would have been out there with my iPhone, trying to take these goofy pictures. Yeah, he has all the equipment, and yeah, he opened a Google Word doc or Google Drive and just dropped them all in and say, hey, here you go, use them. I want you to have these for your website for promotions and stuff. And yeah, another one of my buddies, Tyler, he just messaged me and said, hey, I'm going on the Fish'em LLC veterans guided trip, and he's like, could I take one of your rods with me, and I can take pictures of it, and kind of get some publicity going for it. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll make it happen. And so yeah, it's been multiple people just reaching out, and everybody just wants to support it. And so, and whenever somebody does that, it just ups the ante a little bit more to every time I'm building a rod, it's like, is this rod, going to go to Tyler? Is it going to go to Nate or Cooper? It's just, it just drives me to every rod. I want to just be out of this world for performance, but also just special because, you never know where it's going to go. And, if I'm building it for people like that, it's gotta be special.
Yeah. We've kind of talked about the premise of your whole company. Now I'm going to kind of get into the more technical stuff on the rod side. What kind of actions would you consider your rods?
So they're all fast action,
Yeah.
because for a lot of the applications of what my anglers are doing, I thought about carrying something like a moderate action, but I really felt for a multi-purpose, fly rod, a fast action will, get the rod done, whether you're, an experienced caster, you're a beginner, intermediate, everybody can seem to roll pretty good with a fast.
Yeah. Cool. Towards when someone orders like a spey rod or a switch rod, how do they figure out their grain window for that rod?
Yeah, so the grain, I'll have it posted on my website of, whatever length and weight they're ordering. I'll have a correlating, grain. I did think about putting the grain window actually on the blank, but I like keeping my rods, as slick and as simple as possible. So I'll have all the grain weights available on the website.
That's cool. That's super handy because when I was first getting into two-handed fishing on the Switch, I was talking to Keaton, trying to figure out where do I find the grain window. All right, Keaton, this is the rod I have, and he's like, all right, you need this and this and this and this. So it'd be nice for people to just order the rod on your website, and then boom, right there it says this is the grain window that you need. Do you have any brands that you or types of shooting lines that you think work better with your rods?
Yeah, so for actually Skagit heads, I love anything Rio. The Rio Skagit Max, that's an awesome head. Airflow makes a good one, but and I mean, there's 8 billion types of running lines and stuff, but I like the OPST laser. Yeah, I think it's laser. Yeah.
Gotcha. And as you can, I said shooting lines. I still don't know a lot about two-handed fishing. I heads, running line. It's all I'm still learning.
No,
I'm still
you're all
learning.
good.
So,
Yeah,
Gadget.
I'm extremely dyslexic, and so yeah, usually when I'm like explaining things to people, I'll get the running line, the shooting head mixed up, and
Yeah.
so yeah, no, you're not alone.
What are your rods like? What are your rod weights? Like, do you have lighter weight rods? Do you only stick to like building from like 5 weights and up?
Yes.
Can you go on it?
So with the models I got coming, I'll have 6 through 8 for the
6?
switches and the single hands and stuff like that. And for my rods, a big thing about rods and part of the rabbit holes that I go down whenever I'm doing research is, if you go out and you buy, brand X of rod, and you throw on your Rio, 6 weight line on it, forward tapered, whatever, throw it on there, and you go and cast it. Whoopee, you have a great time, and then you go out and you want to try a different rod. And so you go out and buy it, and you slap the same reel, same line on that rod, and you go out, cast it around, and think, oh boy, I blew it. I bought this new rod, I cast like junk. And the tricky part is, and this is why I love Rio, is what the association, I forget what the abbreviation stands for, but the AFFTA is a fly fishing association that set a standard for what the first 30 feet of fly line weight is going to be. And so, and depending on how that rod is manufactured, if you put it on a deflection graph and then you add certain weight and then do some fancy calculations of what that rod truly is, you may have the rod you previously had that casted nice with that line, then that rod might be a true 6 weight, and then all of a sudden you buy this new rod and it may be a 6.5, it may be just a little bit more heavy, and so that line's not going to respond as well as what you were using on your other rod. And so the AFFTA has a list on their website of if you have this rod weight, you can go down to the list, and so say this is what the grain in the first 30 feet of fly line, this is the optimal window you want. And so when you go on Rio's website, you can pull that up and you can say, all right, where am I at? And that's why I have a hard time deviating to other brands, just because I have a lot of faith and trust that Rio does a lot to keep in correlation with the AFFTA.
Yeah. I was gonna just to kind of piggyback on that Rio Spay recommendations chart. I think that's if you Google that, that's the chart that pops up. Yeah, that thing has. I worked at Orvis for a little while, and when I'm setting up spay and switch rods, that saves your life. Especially I had no idea when I walked in like about two-handed rods, and going through and reading stuff and going through the charts, it really helps you figure out like, okay, this if you got this weight rod, this is going to be where you're going to want to be. So
Yeah, yeah. I've used that multiple times, and yeah, like you, when I was first getting into two hand, like Kyle said, it's so, you know, like when I first got my first spare rod, I'm like, okay, here I go, and my buddy's like, oh no, I like start from the tippet all the way up to the running line. I'm like, that's a lot of junk to put in there. Like, how am I gonna keep all this straight? And so yeah, I googled Rio, and yeah, they have like to break down like the different rod brands and everything, and so it's super helpful.
well, when you get into that like sort of caveman fly fishing where you're like backing, fly line, tippet, fly, and then they're like, here's a spay rod. We got backing, we've got running line, we've got a Skagit or Scandi line. You also want to know like what kind of grain sink tip are you using, and are you going to be fishing this type of fly, and how are you going to cast? What kind of cast are you going to be doing? And you're like, your mind just sitting there throbbing, trying to figure it all out, do the calculations.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I loved when I went to, for Rio with the tips, the T14, T11, T8s. I love that system because I don't know, it clicks with my brain easier rather than picking up a tip and I'm like, this is, so many grains, and then my brain instantly just fizzles and I'm like, okay, now I gotta sit down and figure this out. Yeah, my brain doesn't work like that.
And the thing that's mind-boggling to me is that like Orvis sets theirs up differently, Rio sets theirs up differently, like Scientific Angler, they all got their different like lingos for their sink tips. It's like, just how about everyone just does a big board meeting, we get them all on board, and we just do the same thing so that when I walk into a store, I can use your brand, but at least I know what I'm getting,
Yeah, and that's the hard part with the AFFTA. They set a standard for like single hand fly rods. They set a standard for, okay, like this is the grain weight windows for these rods. Can we all please stick to them? And then these people just making things. It's kind of a two-edged sword because you got these poor people trying to design fly lines, and I feel like they sit down, making it like, okay, this line is going to be for a 6 weight, and they go and they make this great thing, and then they bring it to the rod manufacturer, and then the rod manufacturer whips out this new, oh, this rod's built completely out of Kablabowitz, a new technology, and it handles so much differently. So it seems like it's always just a game of catch up between the two, and so it's like you said, it's so hard to find standard things. So that's another big thing when it comes to the fly rods, especially your spay rods. When you get a rod, it kind of sucks if you have to buy a bunch of different lines for it and stuff. I mean, if you can go on Facebook, find used fly lines, it's better. But yeah, just running that rod, if you pick up a 6 weight and you're like, man, it's not really responding, maybe you're overloading it or underloading it, maybe buy a 7 weight forward taper, throw that on there, see how it responds. And so I've seen a lot of guys where they buy a rod, or you see one on Facebook for sale, and it's like, oh, cast like junk, I don't like it, and it's usually, did they just put their old line on from their other rod, so it's usually just trial and error, like anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think too is just real quick here. I think too is what you're saying is like people buy a rod, they try one head out on that rod, and then instead of trying like a different brand's head on that rod, they're just like you said, they're just like, oh, this is complete trash. This rod doesn't fit what I need. I'm selling it, and then the guy that's getting it half price on the other end throws a different head on it, and he's like, wow, this is everything I ever wanted,
So your secret is to go rod shopping on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't actually build them, I just buy a bunch of junk and then rebrand it.
Well, I should say, you recommend going to your website first, but if you're gonna buy something, buy it off Facebook Marketplace.
Right. No, man,
buys all of them on Facebook, spray paints them, then puts epoxy over them, slaps a sticker.
Right.
Yeah. Everything's sage, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, man, this fish is like sage. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, and also a big part of it too is, especially with spay casting, the huge thing is just your technique. Like, whenever I go out fishing, it seems like and I'll get in the river, I'll start throwing our casts, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm on today. And then if it's cold out, or I had shoulder surgery, and so it seems like after a long day, you're throwing out your 8 billion cast, like you're casting terrible. At the end of the day, you're like, man, I suck. So yeah, it always seems to be just that you find that right combination of that perfect line pairing you put on it, and then also just honing your technique. And I purchased a 12-foot spay rod back in the day, and back when I was starting to get into it, and I was still trying out different lines, and I was convinced that rod was junk. I'm like, oh no, the rod's junk, the line's not right. And then my buddy Eric, AK Trout Spay, he was with me, and he's like, well, let me try it. And he picks it up and he throws this huge loop just way off of there, just takes up all the all the line. It looked great, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, all right, I get it. Like, I just suck.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm nowhere near like where everyone is throwing spay rods, so I'm still like pretty new. I know the basics. I kind of know the technology of it, but like I go out with my friends. I have a friend named Eric, and he just bombs it across the river, and I'm over here doing looks like I'm one of the ribbon twirlers in the, in the
Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, like that meme is literally me. I'm out there like doing this, like trying to spin it all around and whip it out there, and it goes like 30 feet. And I'm like, yes. And he's like, that was a terrible cast. I'm like, it went out there, okay?
I got running line out. It counts.
There's 10 feet of running line out there.
I know, that was me when I was trying to learn the snake roll. I was like, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get out of this without like hooking myself in the face.
Yeah, my go-to is the snap C. That's like that's the one I know.
Yep.
I don't do it enough.
Yep.
Really
the snap and the double spay. There you go. That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Yep, that's all you need. Fish don't
just know which way the wind's blowing.
Right. Fish don't care what it looks like as long as you present it good. You're good.
If it slaps out there and the line gets tight and it swings in front of a fish and that fish eats it, I consider that a win.
Yep. Perfect.
You know what my secret is only fish rivers that are 40 feet wide.
There you go.
Did you see me? I bombed it all the way across the river. Yeah, the river's 20 feet wide, Keaton. Doesn't matter.
I got it there. Yeah, I always get a kick out of some of those guys who, like, they get the 14-foot space, the 13-footers, and they're just bombing it out there. And and the run's like 20 feet in front of them. They're just like whipping it out there. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but they put it in front of fish now.
Yeah. All the fish are like right at their feet.
Right.
Lobbing it to the other side.
Yeah, well, it was so stupid because I was fishing like a sea loft. It wasn't this season, but last season. And I was doing that, it's getting into spay, and I was really getting into my groove, and I was feeling it. I was whipping them things out there, and I didn't catch anything. And then I stripped in, and I just like flopped my shooting head out there, and I got one like 10 feet from me. I'm like, okay, you idiot.
You look good, but
yeah, I know. You look cool, right, but yeah, but no fish.
You're like, oh, that's a nice running line you got there.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about kind of lines and all that. Here's a very important part of the rod is a reel. What kind of reel do you find balance best with your rods?
So that's kind of a tricky question, because for the spays, if you're looking like a Spaco reel or something like that, it's a little heavier. And so that's where I run into, if you're running a heavier reel, with rod building, you can either build the reel seat up blocking or down blocking, and that's basically what's going to balance out that rod really well. And so if you're looking to more like a classic clicker reel, like I really like Spacos, but for any other type of reel, any type of spay type reels, they're going to be a little heavier, and so I do build my rods to compensate for that. But when it comes to reels, I really like the Waterworks Lamson, however you pronounce it. I really like their reels. Just they're really light. I don't have to worry about them being too heavy. They really balance out really nice. So they're really affordable, and so I try and be realistic, and I don't think everybody's going to slap on a hatch or an able on onto every single rod. So I kind of that's always the hard thing is when I build something like, okay, like what's somebody going to put on this? What type of reel are they going to put? And all that kind of stuff. So I try and keep it as down the middle as possible.
You like them to stay true to the weight windows. So like I know like Orvis reels will be like a 7 to 9 weight. Do you like if people are like, oh, I'm gonna go with like an Orvis reel or I'm gonna do a Reddington reel, what should they be following that 7 to 9 rule, or do you think like they should go a little heavier, a little lighter? What's your take on that?
For my take, it always doesn't hurt to go a little heavier.
Yeah.
That because it won't throw off the balance that much. What always really burns my biscuits is when I see somebody, they got an 8 weight and they got this ridiculously small reel on it, and it throws out. For me, whenever I'm balancing out a rod, if a rod wants to, tip back a little bit, give the weight a little bit to me, that's if it can be annoying, but if you get that balance right, it's not too bad. But what really annoys me is when that rod wants to naturally just dip forward and you're
Yeah.
constantly trying to hold that rod up, and so that the balance really gets annoying for that. So usually, try and stay within the weights if you can, but definitely, don't go too light.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that's your counterweight when you're spay or switch fishing.
Hmm.
So making sure you got that weight in the back so that your rod performs the way it's supposed to perform.
Hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Well, cool. Now that we kind of talk technical stuff, kind of talking some more big picture stuff, kind of reflecting back. Now that you're here, you got Alaska Rod Co. building rods, you're selling rods. What's the best advice that you could give to your younger self before you started Alaska Rod Co., before you're at where you are right now?
Um, the best advice I could give is just to believe in yourself. Believe that you're capable, of achieving your goals and your dreams. When I, you know, first started out and got my captain's license, I was just this podunk kid. I would never have dreamed in a billion years that I could, make a rod to compete, with the best of them and have a rod company. I would have told you you're crazy. I'm just gonna, go off and guide and that's it. But so just sitting down and really believing in yourself, and more than that, make a plan and you know stick to that plan, but know that you're gonna fail. There's been so many times that I reached out to a manufacturer and said, hey, I'm from Alaska Rod Co. and they blow me off. I got so small of an order they won't even talk to me, or I'm doing something and the rod didn't turn out right, or the balance was off, or I got over 15K in just blank research, and you just feel defeated sometimes, and you're trying so many different things, but if you give yourself some grace, and as long as you keep moving forward and believe that like I'm experiencing hardships, but I can overcome this, I can build something, I can do it. That would be the best advice I can give to younger me, and anybody listening. If you got a dream and you're willing to do whatever it takes, and you're willing to keep at it and just keep punching, it'll happen. If you believe it, may take 5 years, may take 40, but as long as you keep punching, that's you just got to keep doing it.
That's awesome.
That's
Mhm.
cool.
If someone was looking to purchase one of your rods or get in contact, how could they go about that?
Yeah, so you can email me at alaskarodco@gmail.com. You can message me on Instagram, Facebook, or I got my company phone listed on my website and social medias as well. You can order from my website. You can go into one of our retailers. But if you want a rod from me and you're really looking serious about it, I've talked to multiple people before they want to buy my rod. They'll hit me up on Instagram, say, hey, like, how does this rod fish? Like I'm streamer junkie. I love hucking streamers, all this I love throwing beads, anything. If you have a certain application in mind, just message me, call me. I'll be happy to walk you through what they're like, the building process, the materials they're made out of, and just walk you through the steps. Because I know when I was trying to get into the technical side of things, I would reach out to manufacturers, and they would give me just kind of the rundown of what the rod is. But I really want to have that personal touch. If you really want a rod from me, I want it to be something that you're going to be happy with and that you're just going to fall in love with. So, this is what I love to do. It's, the main drive for me. So yeah, if you ever want a rod, reach out in any way that's easier for you, and I'll get you hooked up.
Is there anything else we haven't asked you that you wanted to add?
I guess favorite fishing story. That's always, a fun one. But
hold on, that'll be at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see here. Ask me.
Is there anything else you wanted to? Is there any sports shows that you're going to? Anything along that sorts that you'll be at?
Yeah, I was looking at going to the spring show up in Anchorage, but apparently there's a backlog list of people because apparently 2020 backlog. So I'm on the waiting list. So I might be there, I might not be. Yeah. Hopefully, I haven't looked into. I think it's happening this year, but they've been canceling it, so I don't know. But the Spade Collab out in Cooper Landing. Hopefully, I'll be there if they have that. I'm not sure. And but yeah, and then you'll see me. I'm kind of like the abominable snowman when it comes to fishing. Like when there's crowds and it's all packed tight and everything, I kind of retreat to my shop and do my thing. But usually when it gets kind of cold, there's not a lot of folk out on the river. Then that's usually when I emerge. So winter fishing, you'll probably see me out on the upper middle Kenai, these winter days.
Cool, that's awesome. All right, we're rolling into our favorite time of the podcast, and we're gonna hit you with some rapid fire questions. Wop 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 wop. Trap horn.
Insert here.
Yep, insert here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, rapid fire round. What is your favorite fish to catch?
Coho.
Good. Yep.
What's your dream destination to go fly fishing or fishing?
Ooh, dream destination. Man, I would really love. I've got a couple invites to go to Bristol, and I would really, really like to go to Bristol. And then also, I'd love to go to, I believe, Mongolia. Those big taimen, those big salmonoid, just beast-looking things. That's one of my dreams too. I want to fly one of those Soviet era helicopters down one of the rivers. Yeah, I want to hook one of them babies.
That'd be sweet. Those things are massive. Dude,
they're ridiculous.
Favorite meal / drink when you hit the water?
I'm too ADD, so I like being really mobile. So I'm the classic vanilla dude with trail mix. I just love just popping it in and scurrying around. So trail mix for a snack, and then usually some kind of beer, Alaskan white or something.
Yeah, nice.
Gotcha. You're headed to the river, you're driving to your favorite spot. What music are you playing?
Oh, easy. AC/DC. Every day, every single time. You jump in the truck, you throw on, a whole lot of Rosie or AC/DC. The time you get to the river, man, you're pumped, you're ready to go.
Listen, what's your go-to AC/DC song?
Ooh.
Are you a plastic guy? You like Back in Black? Or
I like Back in Black. I love Whole Lot of Rosie. Let There Be Rock is a really good one. Money Talk, yeah. have a drink on me.
Yep. Yep. All right. So I got another one. You are headed out the door to fish. What's the first thing that you're going to grab?
First thing I'm gonna grab, probably my fly box, because I'm always like interchanging the flies out of there, and so there's been times I swapped out everything, and so I trudged all the way out one time to go king fishing. I popped it open. There's a bunch of micro intruders in there. I'm just like, oh. So yeah, usually I'm always a fanatic of popping the fly box and seeing what I got.
Yeah.
Nice. What is something you wish you knew when you started?
Fishing or
Yeah, fishing.
Fishing, rod building, anything like that.
yeah, for fishing, what I wish I knew is just being able to ask questions. I sometimes, with me personally and other guys, like sometimes the ego can get in the way, or you don't want to bother somebody to ask. But there's been multiple times where I walked up to somebody and you trying to respectfully ask for stuff without getting in their business too much, and everybody's always usually just been so open, like, oh, I'm using this, this is the technique. So asking for help would really be the big thing. And then for rod building, get ready for failure. a lot of failure. Just, build something and then just build it better the next time.
That's awesome.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, I just want to thank Matt for taking the time tonight, coming on, chatting to us about fishing. Just felt like we had another buddy on board with us tonight, so it's been really great to talk to you. Not every day me and Kyle can sit down and nerd out with fellow fishermen. So as we come to an end, I just want to wrap up and say thank you to all our listeners that take the time to come all the way to the end of the podcast and listen to all our podcasts. Nothing but great support from every single one of you. Shout out to all the people giving us reviews on Apple Podcasts. And if you haven't and you're really enjoying this, we'd really appreciate it if you visit Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment or a 5-star review if you think we're doing great. If you think there's some other things that we could work on, you're always free to leave a comment or reach out to us on Instagram and tell us how you think we could do better. I also want to point out that you can check out all the people that have been on our podcast. If you want to get out and go fishing, you want to get a rod from Matt, anything, you can go check their bios out, learn a little bit about them, and we'll have links to their websites so that you can either schedule a trip, you can buy rods, anything of that sort. There's a little fun little summary about them, learn their favorite foods and everything. So make sure to check that out. www.theyoungguidespodcast.com. Yeah, Kyle, is there anything you'd like to add?
Nope. I just think I think we need to hear Matt's awesome fish story to cap this awesome episode off.
Oh, ending with a fish story.
The fish story.
Yep.
Man, there's quite a few, but I'm kind of I got a couple, but I guess I'm kind of a sucker for sentimental, so we'll go with that. One time we were working out at Homer. One of my favorite fish stories was it was 3 brothers, and it was really low tide in Homer, and so I looked up the ramp, and there's this 3 big older gentlemen, and there's this old guy in a wheelchair, and so they pick up the wheelchair and they're walking almost vertical down this ramp, and I was thinking, oh man, it's gonna be rough out there today. Like, how are we gonna do this? And they loaded this guy on. To this day, I don't even know what his name was, but his name was Grandpa. We just, he came on board like, that's Grandpa. I called him that all day long, and he was 90 years old. And we loaded him up into that boat. We ran all the way out to the Barren Islands, and we're catching slab halibut, and the day before we took out like this bunch of guys who were like up in Alaska for a trip of a lifetime. And they're all whining like, oh, I'm seasick, or they hooked this big halibut, and they're all struggling to get it up. And then next day we got Grandpa, like he put his wheelchair brakes on, he was rocking and rolling. I'm like holding on the back of that thing. He's hauling in these 80-90 pound halibut, and Grandpa, like he's just crank. You just see he wasn't losing steam. He was just a steady crank, just reeling them things up. He's got the rod just bent over, sitting on the side of the boat, and he did it all day long too. And it was,
Oh my God.
He was just, I think it was his first time up in Alaska, and it was just something super special. Just to see this guy who you just tell he was just happy to be there. He was happy, to be all of his sons, and I'm assuming grandsons too. And so it was just such a cool thing to see. Like everybody just out enjoying it, and Grandpa was out there just kicking butt, and it was awesome.
That's probably the best story yet. You just hit the #1 charts on the Young Guide podcast fish stories. And I just want to give a shout out to Grandpa. If you listen to this podcast, you're the man. All right.
Yeah, Grandpa's the man. He was the OG for sure.
Oh, that is legendary. I'm still laughing. That is so cool. So sweet. Matt, the pleasure has been ours. You have been awesome. Thank you for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is awesome. I love sitting down with you guys. I love the podcast. I'll definitely be listening in the future. And I wish you the best of luck. It's going to take off. I know it.
We appreciate it. And we'll all be at the top. We'll be selling your rods, and we'll be talking about fishing, and then we'll go out fishing. So
when I got my manufacturing plant going, you guys can just have your podcast in the corner and help me roll blanks, and it'll be all good.
I'm totally in for that. We'll have little podcast spots all around the country.
There you go.
Our podcast bounce out and travel and go fish. No, that's the dream, but that's a stretch.
Yeah, well, we'll make it happen.
Keep at it. Just keep hammering the nail. So.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Matt, we appreciate you being on. It's been a super fun podcast. I know we're going to have you back on here in the future, and I know we're probably all going to chat off the podcast and keep in touch. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, anytime you want to have me on and hear me babble on about rods, I'd be happy to come on. Sweet.
Sure. Well, once again, this has been another episode of the Young Guys podcast, and I'm Keaton.
I'm Kyle.
And we brought it to you. Peace out.
Catch you on the next one.